I'm still shaking as I write this. 3 days ago, I watched my best friend die, and the police don't believe a word I'm saying. They think I'm insane. Maybe I am. But I know what I saw in those mountains, and I need to tell someone before they lock me up, or worse, before it finds me again. My name is Charles. I'm 24 years old, and until last weekend, I thought monsters were just stories we told to scare each other around campfires. I was wrong. So terribly, devastatingly wrong. It started as a simple getaway. My girlfriend, Emma, my best friend, Jake, and I had been planning this trip for months. We needed a break from our dead-end boss and the suffocating routine of city life. Emma found the perfect place on Airbnb, a remote cabin deep in the Smoky Mountains, miles away from civilization. The pictures showed a charming wooden structure surrounded by thick forest, with a fireplace and rustic charm. Authentic mountain experience, the listing promised. The host name was Gerald Mackenzie, an elderly local who'd lived in these mountains his entire life. We arrived on Friday evening just as the sun was setting behind the peaks. The November air was biting cold, and dark clouds promised snow. The cabin was exactly as advertised, isolated at the end of a winding dirt road that took us 30 minutes to navigate from the main highway. Pine trees crowded around the property like silent sentinels, their branches swaying in the wind. Gerald was waiting for us on the porch, a thin man in his 70s with weathered skin and eyes that seemed to look right through you. He didn't smile when we pulled up. "You're the city folks," he said flatly. Not a question, but a statement. "That's us," Jake replied, cheerfully, always the friendly one. "Thanks for having us, Mr. Mackenzie." The old man's jaw tightened. "Call me Gerald. Come inside. Got some things to tell you before I leave." The interior was cozy enough. Wooden walls decorated with old hunting trophies, a stone fireplace, and furniture that had seen better decades. But something felt off. The deer heads mounted on the walls had been positioned facing the windows, as if watching the forest outside. Strange scratches marked the door frame, deep gouges in the wood that looked almost deliberate. Gerald noticed me staring. "Bear," he said curtly. "We get them sometimes." He walked us through the cabin quickly, pointing out the kitchen, the 2 bedrooms, the bathroom. Then he stopped at the back door, his hand resting on the deadbolt. "Listen carefully," he said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "I don't normally rent this place in November. Had to make an exception because my daughter needs surgery and insurance don't cover it all. But there are rules and you follow them exactly, understand?" Emma and I exchanged glances. Jake just nodded, probably thinking this was some quirky mountain hospitality thing. "First rule, all doors and windows stay locked after sunset. Every single one. Check them twice. Second, you hear anything outside at night, anything at all, you ignore it. Don't look, don't investigate, don't even pull back the curtains. Third, there's silver bullets in the drawer by the fireplace. Rifles in the closet. You don't touch either unless you absolutely have to." "Silver bullets?" Jake laughed nervously. "What are we hunting? Werewolves?" Gerald's face went stone cold. "This isn't a joke, boy. People have died in these mountains. Just last year, a hiker went missing not 5 miles from here. They found pieces of him scattered across a half-mile radius. Something did that. Something that still walks these woods." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Emma grabbed my arm. "There's stories," Gerald continued, his eyes distant now. "Old stories. My grandfather told me, and his grandfather told him, about things that live in the deep forest, things that aren't quite animal and aren't quite human. Most of the time they keep to themselves, but November is their time. The first snowfall awakens them, makes them hungry. They come down from the high peaks looking for prey." "Mr. Mackenzie," I started, trying to sound reasonable. "We appreciate the concern, but—" "You think I'm crazy?" He cut me off. "You think I'm some superstitious old fool trying to scare city kids? Fine, believe what you want. But when night comes and you hear the howling, when you hear something trying the doors and scratching at the windows, you remember what I told you. You stay inside, you stay quiet, and you pray it loses interest and moves on." He handed me a heavy key ring. "I'll be back Monday morning to check on you. The landline works if you need to call out, but cell service is non-existent up here. There's food in the pantry, firewood stacked outside. Don't go wandering in the forest after dark. With that, he left. We watched his old truck disappear down the dirt road until the taillights were swallowed by the gathering darkness. Well, Jake said, breaking the silence, that was absolutely insane. Silver bullets? What decade does that guy think we're living in? Emma wasn't laughing. Those scratches on the door didn't look like bear marks to me. Babe, come on, I said, pulling her close. It's just small-town creepiness, probably trying to add some local flavor to the Airbnb experience. Tomorrow, we'll laugh about this. We spent the evening settling in, starting a fire and cooking dinner. The cabin felt warmer with the three of us there, more normal. We played cards, drank the wine we'd brought, and slowly the unease from Gerald's warnings faded. By 10 o'clock, we were relaxed and joking about mountain legends. That's when we heard it. The sound started distant, somewhere deep in the forest. A howl, but not like any wolf or coyote I'd ever heard. This was deeper, resonant, almost human in its anguish. It echoed through the trees and seemed to vibrate in my chest. We froze. The cards in Jake's hands scattered across the table. Wolf? Emma whispered. Before I could answer, another howl joined the first. Then another. They were calling to each other, communicating, and they were getting closer. Okay, Jake said, standing up. That's genuinely creepy, but it's just animals, right? Just regular mountain animals? I wanted to agree, but something primal in my brain was screaming danger. Every instinct told me to run, to hide, to make myself small and invisible. We should check the doors, Emma said. Make sure everything's locked, like Gerald said. We went through the cabin together, testing every window latch and door lock. Everything was secure, but as I checked the back door, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The scratches on the door frame were fresh. Splinters of wood lay on the floor beneath them, and when I touched the gouges, they were still tacky with sap. Something had been here recently. Very recently. Charles? Emma called from the living room. Come look at this. She was standing at the front window, peering through a gap in the curtains. I joined her, and my breath caught. There were tracks in the dirt outside, large tracks, far too big to be a normal wolf. They circled the cabin, coming right up to the porch steps. In the moonlight that had broken through the clouds, I could see the impressions clearly. Four-toed paw prints, but there was something wrong about them. They were too long, too wide, and in some places, they looked almost like elongated human handprints. What the hell makes tracks like that? Jake asked, looking over my shoulder. The howling came again, much closer now. Close enough that I could hear the individual voices in the chorus. They were surrounding us. Everyone away from the windows, I said, pulling the curtain shut. Now we huddled in the center of the living room, the fire crackling behind us. The howling continued for what felt like hours, sometimes distant, sometimes so close it sounded like the creatures were right outside the walls. We didn't speak. We barely breathed. Then, at exactly midnight, according to the old clock on the mantel, everything went silent. The sudden absence of sound was somehow worse than the howling. We waited, listening to our own heartbeats and the pop of logs in the fireplace. That's when we heard the footsteps on the porch. Not paws, footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, walking on two legs. They crossed the wooden planks slowly, and I could hear the boards creaking under immense weight. Whatever was out there stopped at the front door. The doorknob rattled. Someone or something was testing it, seeing if it was locked. Emma grabbed my hands so tight her nails drew blood. Jake had gone pale, his eyes fixed on the door. The rattling stopped. For a moment, nothing happened. Then we heard it move along the side of the cabin, and the window in the kitchen rattled in its frame. It was checking every entry point, methodically, intelligently. When it reached the back door, it stopped again. This time we heard something else. Sniffing. Deep, wet snorts like a bee following a scent. It knew we were inside. It could smell us. Then came the scratching. Long, scraping sounds as something dragged across the wood. Not claws, but fingers. I was certain of it. The scratches moved down the door, then back up, then clustered around the lock as if the thing was studying it, trying to figure out how it worked. The gun, Jake whispered. Where did he say the gun was? Closet by the front door, I replied, not taking my eyes off the back door. I'll get it. No, Emma hissed. Don't move. Don't make a sound. But Jake was already crossing the room, moving as quietly as he could. I heard him open the closet, the faint click of the latch, then the rustle of coats being pushed aside. That's when the thing at the back door went crazy. The scratching became frantic, violent. The entire door shook in its frame. Whatever was out there knew we were moving, knew we were trying to arm ourselves. A sound came from beyond the door that I can still hear in my nightmares. A wet, guttural snarl mixed with something that sounded horrifically like a human scream. Jake emerged from the closet with an old hunting rifle. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold it. Is it loaded? I asked. He checked. No, where are the bullets? Drawer by the fireplace. Gerald said silver bullets. The back door was bending now. I could see the wood starting to splinter around the lock. Whatever was out there was impossibly strong. Jake ran to the fireplace and yanked open the drawer. Inside were 12 silver bullets, gleaming in the firelight. He loaded the rifle with fumbling fingers, dropping 2 bullets that rolled across the floor. The door gave way. It happened so fast. One moment the lock was holding, the next the entire door frame exploded inward in a shower of splinters and torn wood. The thing that came through was like nothing I'd ever seen. It was massive, nearly 7 feet tall, with a body that seemed caught between human and beast. Thick, matted fur covered most of its form, but patches of pale, scarred skin showed through. Its legs were digitigrade, bent backward like a wolf's, ending in clawed feet, but its arms were too long, too human, with fingers that ended in black talons. The head was the worst part, an elongated wolf's skull with jaws that could easily encompass a human head. But the eyes were wrong. They were too intelligent, too aware, burning with a yellow light that seemed to glow from within. It looked right at us and opened its mouth, revealing rows of teeth designed for one purpose: tearing flesh from bone. Emma screamed. The creature's head snapped toward her with predatory focus. Jake raised the rifle and fired. The shot was deafening in the enclosed space. The bullet caught the creature in the shoulder, and it shrieked, a sound that was equal parts animal and human agony. Silver smoke rose from the wound, and the thing stumbled backward. "It works!" Jake shouted. "The silver works!" But the creature didn't retreat. Instead, it seemed to get angry. It charged at Jake with frightening speed, covering the distance in 2 bounds. Jake fired again, missed. The creature's clawed hands swept out and caught him across the chest. I heard ribs crack. Jake flew backward and hit the stone fireplace with a sickening thud. The rifle clattered across the floor. "Jake!" Emma ran toward him, but I grabbed her, pulling her back. The creature turned its attention to us. It stood upright, head nearly touching the ceiling, breathing heavily through its nightmare jaws. Blood and saliva dripped from its teeth. This close, I could smell it. A mixture of wet dog, rotting meat, and something acrid like burning hair. I dragged Emma toward the bedroom, the only room with a door that might buy us seconds. The creature followed, unhurried now, knowing we were trapped. It was toying with us. We made it into the bedroom and I slammed the door, throwing the simple lock. Emma was sobbing, calling for Jake. Through the door, I could hear the creature in the living room. There was a wet tearing sound, then Jake started screaming. The screams lasted 15 seconds. They felt like 15 hours. When silence came again, I heard the creature approaching the bedroom door. Its shadow blocked the light coming through the crack at the bottom. "The window," I whispered to Emma. "We have to go out the window." "We're on the 2nd floor. We die if we stay here." The door exploded inward. The creature had to crouch to fit through the door frame, and in that moment of compression, I saw something that made my mind rebel against reality. Its spine was shifting, its joints bending in ways that shouldn't be possible. It was reforming itself to fit through the opening. I grabbed Emma and threw open the window. Cold night air rushed in, and with it, the smell of pine and coming snow. I looked down. It was maybe a 15-foot drop to the ground, onto hard-packed earth and rocks. Behind us, the creature was through the door. "Jump!" I screamed. Emma jumped first. I heard her land hard and cry out, but she was moving. She was alive. I climbed onto the sill just as the creature lunged. Its claws raked across my back, tearing through my shirt and into flesh. The pain was incredible, like being touched with red-hot iron. I fell more than jumped, landing badly on my ankle. Something twisted with a pop that I felt more than heard. Emma was there, dragging me to my feet. Above us, the creature appeared at the window. For a moment, I thought it would jump down after us. Instead, it vanished back into the cabin. We heard it moving through the rooms, heard the front door crash open. "It's coming around!" Emma shouted. "Run!" We ran into the forest, Emma half carrying me as I limped on my shattered ankle. The trees swallowed us, and the darkness became absolute. We couldn't see more than a few feet ahead, stumbling over roots and rocks. Behind us, we could hear the creature. It was tracking us easily, its footfalls heavy and steady. It knew these woods. We didn't. Snow began to fall, light flakes at first, then heavier. Emma was crying, her breath coming in ragged gasps. My back was on fire, and I could feel blood soaking through my shirt. My ankle sent jolts of agony up my leg with every step. "There!" Emma pointed ahead. Through the trees, I could see a structure, a small shed or outbuilding probably used by hunters. We made for it, our last hope. The shed was unlocked. We fell inside and Emma slammed the door, looking for something to barricade it with. The interior was empty except for some old tools and a wooden workbench. Together, we could We dragged the bench in front of the door. The creature arrived moments later. We could see its shadow through the gaps in the shed's wooden walls. It circled the building slowly, and I realized it was sniffing again, learning our scent, memorizing it. Then it began to tear the shed apart. The walls were old and thin. Its claws punched through them like paper, creating holes that let in the snowy night and revealed glimpses of the monster outside. An arm reached through one hole, groping blindly, fingers curling and uncurling. The talons were caked with blood. Jake's blood. Emma and I pressed ourselves into the far corner, as far from the searching arm as possible. The creature withdrew its arm and moved to another wall. More holes appeared. It was being methodical, systematic, breaking down our shelter piece by piece. "Charles," Emma whispered. I'm so sorry I brought us here." "It's not your fault," I said, even though everything was falling apart. "None of this is your fault." A section of the wall gave way entirely, and the creature's head thrust through. This close, I could see details I wish I could forget. The individual fangs, each one as long as my finger. The patches of diseased, hairless skin stretched over its skull. The eyes that held a terrible intelligence and an even more terrible hunger. It looked at Emma. I don't know what made me do what I did next. Maybe it was love. Maybe it was just instinct. But I grabbed one of the old tools from the floor, a rusted gardening fork, and drove it with all my strength into the creature's eye. It shrieked and pulled back, and for a moment we had space. The fork was still embedded in its eye socket, the handle sticking out obscenely. "Go," I screamed at Emma. "The back wall is weakest. Break through it and run. Get to the road. Don't stop. I'm not leaving you. You have to. One of us has to survive to tell people what's out here. Go. Now, Emma." She hesitated for one more second, her eyes meeting mine. Then she turned and threw herself at the back wall. The old boards splintered, and she was through, running into the snowy forest. The creature recovered and turned its attention fully to me. It pulled the fork from its eye with one clawed hand, and I watched the wound smoke and begin to close. Not all the way, but enough. Whatever this thing was, it could heal. It came for me through the widening hole in the wall, and I knew I was about to die. I thought about fighting, but what was the point? I had no weapons, no silver bullets. I was injured and exhausted. The creature stopped, inches from me. Its ruined eye was weeping some clear fluid, and the other eye studied me with what almost looked like curiosity. It reached out with one massive hand and placed it on my chest, right over my heart. I could feel the claws pricking through my shirt. Then it leaned in close. So close, I could feel its breath on my face. It smelled like death and decay. Its jaws opened, and I was certain this was the end. Instead of biting, it made a sound, a low, rumbling vocalization that rose and fell. It took me a moment to realize what it was trying to do. It was trying to speak. The sounds weren't quite words, just approximations, garbled and wet. But the intent was clear. It wanted to communicate something. The effort seemed to frustrate it, and after a few failed attempts, it gave up. But it didn't kill me. Instead, it released me and stepped back. Then it turned and bounded out of the shed, disappearing into the forest. I could hear it moving away, hear its howl echo through the mountains one final time. I don't know how long I sat there in the ruined shed, bleeding and broken. Eventually, I forced myself to stand. My ankle wouldn't support my weight, so I crawled. I crawled through the snow, following Emma's tracks, leaving a trail of blood behind me. I found her 100 yards from the shed. She was still alive when I reached her, but barely. The creature had caught up to her, and it had been brutal. I won't describe what I saw. I can't. Some images should never be put into words. She tried to speak, but only blood came out. I held her as the light left her eyes, as the snow fell around us and slowly began to cover her body. I held her and I screamed at the uncaring forest, at the indifferent mountains, at God or whatever cruel force had allowed this to happen. When I finally ran out of voice, I heard engines. Lights appeared through the trees. Gerald had come back early, probably worried about the storm. He found me there, cradling Emma's body, my mind shattered into pieces. The police came, paramedics. They took me to a hospital in town. They asked questions I couldn't answer coherently. When I finally told them the truth, told them about the creature, about what it had done to Jake and Emma, they looked at each other with expressions I recognize. Pity mixed with skepticism. They searched the cabin and the forest. They found Jake's body, or what was left of it. They found the destroyed shed and the blood trail. They found Emma. But they didn't find any evidence of what I described. The tracks had been covered by snow. The creature was gone. The official story is that we were attacked by a bear, a large, aggressive bear that had been displaced by the early winter. The investigation is ongoing, but I can see it in their eyes. They think I did it. They think I killed my girlfriend and my best friend in some psychotic break, and the injuries I sustained were self-inflicted or the result of a struggle. They haven't charged me yet, but it's coming. I can feel it. Gerald visited me in the hospital once. He stood at the foot of my bed, his weathered face grave. "You saw it," he said, not a question. I nodded. "Your friends?" "Both dead." He closed his eyes briefly. "I'm sorry, I should never have rented the place in November. I knew better. The money, I thought maybe this year would be different." "What is it?" I asked. "What is that thing?" "Exactly what you think it is," he replied. "My grandfather called them the first people. Said they were here before humans came to these mountains, that we drove them higher and higher into the peaks with our guns and our towns. Most of the time they stay up there in the deep wilderness. But when winter comes early, when the first snows fall in November, they get hungry. They come down." "Why didn't it kill me?" I asked. "It had me. It could have ended me like it ended the others, but it just left." Gerald was quiet for a long moment. The old stories say they can tell the difference between those who are marked and those who aren't. You survived its attack, felt its claws, looked into its eyes. You're marked now, Charles. Part of its territory, its world. It let you live so you could tell the story, so others would know to fear the mountains in winter. "No one believes the story," I said bitterly. "They will," Gerald replied. "Eventually. When it happens again, it always happens again." He left after that, and I haven't seen him since. They're releasing me from the hospital tomorrow. The police will be waiting. They'll take me to a cell or maybe a psychiatric facility. They'll try to make me confess to murders I didn't commit. Try to convince me that what I saw wasn't real. But I know the truth. I know it lives in those mountains. I know what it feels like to look into the eyes of a predator that sees you as nothing more than meat. I know the sound Emma made when she died, the wetness of Jake's blood on my hands, the smell of the creature's breath. "I'm marked now," Gerald said. "Part of its world." I think about that a lot. I think about the way the creature looked at me in those final moments, the way it tried to speak. What was it trying to say? Was it a warning, a promise, a claim of ownership? I'll never know. But I do know this. I can't stay in cities anymore. The walls feel too thin, the locks too weak. I catch myself checking windows compulsively, testing doors. I wake up at midnight every night, my heart pounding, listening for footsteps on floorboards that aren't there. And sometimes when the wind blows from the east, from the direction of the mountains, I swear I can hear howling. Distant and faint, but there, calling to me, reminding me that I survived when I shouldn't have, that I'm living on borrowed time. The creature let me go, but it didn't set me free. I'm still in its trap, still caught in those mountains, even though I'm miles away. I'm still running through that forest, still hearing Emma's final breath, still feeling those claws rake across my back. They're going to say I'm crazy. They're going to lock me away. Maybe that's for the best. Maybe in a cell with strong locks and bright lights, I'll finally feel safe. But I know better. I know that no lock is strong enough, no light bright enough to keep it out if it decides to come for me. Because that thing isn't just an animal. It's older than that, smarter than that. It's patient and it's calculating. And somewhere in those dark mountains, it's waiting. It's always waiting. And one day when the first snow falls in November, when the moon is full and the night is long, it will come down from the peaks again. It will find another cabin, another group of city folks looking for an authentic mountain experience, and the cycle will begin again. I just hope they're smarter than we were. I hope they listen to the warnings and lock their doors and stay quiet when the howling starts. But deep down, I know they won't, because no one ever believes the stories until it's too late. Until they're face to face with something that shouldn't exist, something that turns your understanding of the world inside out and leaves you broken in the snow. Jake is dead, Emma is dead, and I'm whatever comes after death when you're too damaged to keep living but too stubborn to stop breathing. I'm a ghost walking around in a body that forgot how to feel anything except fear. The worst part? Sometimes I dream I'm back in that shed and the creature is reaching for me. But this time when it tries to speak, I understand what it's saying. It's saying my name, over and over. Charles, Charles, Charles. And when I wake up, I can still hear it echoing in my skull. They're going to ask me tomorrow if I'm ready to tell the truth. The real truth, they'll say, about what really happened in those mountains. But I've already told them the truth. They just don't want to hear it. The truth is that monsters are real. The truth is that there are things in the deep places of the world that have never stopped hunting us. The truth is that we're not at the top of the food chain when we step into their territory. The truth is that I'm the lucky one. I survived. And that might be the most terrible truth of all.